the political crisis. This after it said that wouldn't happen unless President Hosni Mubarak stood down.
We gave the condition that we didn't want just promises which will disappoint the great people who came out in their millions. They were attacked, and at that time we said we will not speak with the regime if what they say is just promises. We gave the condition that aggression against our people stop. Tens of Egyptians were killed. We gave the condition that anybody who caused harm to the Egyptian people over the past 30 years will be taken to court. We gave the condition that peaceful demonstrations should be the right of all Egyptians. They accepted this. We said the army must stay in its honourable position and support this nationalist movement. This condition was accepted. In light of this, we said this is the beginning of dialogue, this dialogue in which the demands of the people are given, and all groups are with us, including those who've lit the spark which brought the light.
Well, let's get the latest now from the Egyptian capital. One of our correspondents, who we're not naming for his own safety, joins us now live on the line. What more do we know about this Muslim Brotherhood statement, and how significant is it?
Well, it's highly significant, I think, Darren. It comes on the back of a pretty significant day in terms of political movements here in Cairo. Until now, they said that there would be no dialogue until Mubarak stepped down. As you heard, they're Egypt's largest political group, banned from taking part in elections, although members do stand as independents. They've got vast support here, respected for a lot of the social welfare work that they do. And I think they didn't want to miss an opportunity to be part of the dialogue at such a critical time. Obviously, as we heard, various opposition groups and independents had been talking to Vice President Suleiman yesterday, putting their proposals forward. There were the resignations of the NDP's leadership, including Mubarak's son, Gamal. And so I think, yes, they're trying to capture some of the demands of many of the protesters here in the square. That's not to say that these protesters necessarily agree with any kind of manifesto or are necessary supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood, but they don't want to be standing outside of this kind of unified vision of getting Mubarak to stand down.
Meanwhile, the protesters remain in Tahrir for a 13th day now. What's the latest from the square?
Well, it's light now. You've good vision across the square there. The tent area is definitely expanding. There's a big central area with tents panning out out towards the side of the square there, and on the other side. There's seemingly increasing numbers of people. There's certainly not as many as there have been on other days. The barricade where a lot of the worst clashes happened a few days ago. It's incredible the resolve of these people, of the protesters. They are now standing in front of the barricade, a long line, some of them holding Egyptian flags. You can see very well organized piles of stones and rocks behind them that one would presume they would use for any attack by pro-Mubarak supporters. It's very calm at this stage, though, and the military presence is certainly not as great as it has been in recent days.
OK, thank you very much indeed for that update. Well, the move by the Muslim Brotherhood follows the mass resignation of leading figures from the ruling National Democratic Party. They include President Mubarak's son and potential successor Gamal. Nick Spicer reports on that and other key developments over the past 24 hours.
Egyptian TV announces big changes in the ruling party. Gone are the executive committee and the president's son, Gamal Mubarak. But it's the father who's got to go for the demonstrators. Army troops tried to take down their barricades earlier in the day. The head of the Army Central Command came to ask them to go home so the country could go back to normal. They chanted back, "We're not leaving, he is." But Hosni Mubarak wasn't. Not yet, anyway. He met with senior cabinet members to talk about the economy, reeling after 1 million tourists fled. Still, the government would slowly get back to business, the Prime Minister told the nation.
I mean, for every day that goes, stability returns and we are more hopeful. We no longer see the events happening like last Friday, and security forces are gradually returning. Today you don't hear about more clashes, which shows that generally things are getting better. The opposition itself is very divided. But this doesn't mean that we won't talk to all parties. In the end, the main thrust of their demands is the same.
But the demands of the international community seem to have changed. In a surprise comment on Saturday, the former U.S. ambassador Washington sent to Cairo to talk to the Egyptian president seemed to back off on none too subtle hints that Mubarak must go.
I therefore believe that President Mubarak's continued leadership is critical. It's his opportunity to write his own legacy. He's given 60 years of his life to the service of his country. This is an ideal moment for him to show the way forward.
U.S. officials quickly said he was speaking as a private citizen and his views were his own. But Western diplomats have been slowly changing their emphasis from the need for immediate transition to the need for an orderly one. With Hillary Clinton saying that could happen under Vice President Omar Suleiman, who reportedly doesn't want to ask Mubarak to leave office right now. And that won't satisfy the tired but proud protesters in Liberation Square. There may be some changes in Egypt's ruling party and even in the views of the international community, but they say they aren't going until their president does. Nick Spicer, Al Jazeera.
Well, U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has been sticking to the more measured stance of the White House. Speaking at a security conference in Munich, she reiterated President Obama's call for change.
I urge the leaders of the region to address the needs and aspirations of their people and offer a positive vision for the future, for their sake and for ours. Because the region is being battered by a perfect storm of powerful trends, the status quo is simply not sustainable.
Well, a day after he was praised as wise by the Italian Prime Minister, Hosni Mubarak has had more words of support, this time from Israel's President Shimon Peres.
In spite of all the attacks against President Mubarak, I know him for many years throughout his presidency, and I credit him with one of the persons who saved many lives by preventing war in the Middle East. You save life of Egyptians, of Arabs, of Israelis, by not allowing to renew a war. No matter what is now the criticism against him, his contribution for peace, as far as I'm concerned, will never be forgotten.
Well, let's go live to New York now, where we can talk to Daniel Levy. He's director of the Middle East Task Force at the New America Foundation and a former senior advisor to the Israeli government. Daniel Levy, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has described the turmoil in Egypt as, quote, a tremendous threat. I mean, does Israel have good reason to be worried about events unfolding in Egypt?
Well, Darren, I think there are different ways that one can look at this. First of all, there is, of course, the Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty, a source of stability, something tremendously important for Israel. I think most people would say that is not under threat. Neither side has an interest in renewing a confrontation on their border or anywhere else. But I think the second thing that is of concern, and I think this is where the concern really lies for Israel, is that under the Mubarak regime, Egypt has been working from a regional playbook, a regional set of policies that have sometimes looked like they were written in Jerusalem or perhaps Jerusalem and Washington. And I think what everyone expects is that that will change if Egypt becomes more democratic, more responsive to its public, because there are a whole set of policies which have been convenient to Netanyahu and to an Israel that is occupying the Palestinian land. The blockade of Gaza.
Yeah, we'll come back to the blockade of Gaza in a second, but let me just ask you, I mean, it seems that both secular and Muslim opposition groups within Egypt are coalescing around Mohammed el-Baradei, perhaps, as a potential leader. But just going back to April last year, el-Baradei expressed his support for what he called Palestinian resistance. So what's the best that Israel is hoping that will come out of this in terms of the new potential leadership in Egypt?
Well, Darren, Israel has quite openly embraced stability status quo, which is if you can't keep Mubarak himself, keep something as close as possible. Omer Suleiman is someone very close to the Israeli leadership, a lot of intelligence cooperation. I think the Israelis will be part of a coalition, and I think there are others in the West who are also part of this coalition who will be trying to scaremonger regarding the role that the Muslim Brotherhood and others, as you said, will have, and who will be pushing for something that isn't really a democracy, something where the majority of control still lies with the military, with the hope that the military can continue to receive aid from the West and can be more in line with Western and Israeli policy. I think that whatever the outcome, a more democratic Egypt will not go along with the policy